let's get digging and see what we find in here. Oh. Oh. This is not seaweed. This is a story with 3 parts. 1, how the most disgusting beach in Northern Ireland remained hidden in plain sight for 50 years, just 10 metres from a public footpath. 2, how juicy succulent mussels consumed in cafes and restaurants in Europe are actually the last line of defence to an ecological disaster right here. And thirdly, the uncomfortable truth about how this was allowed to happen in the first place. And unlike the video I made about the Loch Ness algae crisis, this is not actually a story with any great mystery. All parts of it have been well documented, plans have been put in place, and honestly, that just makes it so much worse that this has been allowed to happen. And we're going to start with this beach here on the edge of Belfast Loch. And Belfast Loch is a place that is enjoyed by people boating, people swimming, people paddleboarding, people fishing, and you'll often see families playing on beaches. And I'm at this beach today because of a tip-off from an environmental activist who saw my video about Loch Ness, and they directed me to a report. It's a report on the NI Water website, a report that was not easy to find. It's kind of hidden, it's kind of buried, and to be honest, I completely understand why. It is called The Story of Belfast Loch, and its contents are absolutely horrifying. So if you want to get the full details, go and read that report. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the things that horrified me the most. And the first thing is this beach. This is a beach that I have run past and cycled past many times in the past, especially when I was a student. It's a beach that's right beside the Belfast Loch Shore path. It's kind of a greenway that goes all the way from White Abbey down to Lisburn. And I've been told that I should come here and dig. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. So let's go dig and see what we can find. Which way do you tighten this? Oh, that way. I've got the rubber gloves on. I have an idea of what I might find here, and I do not want to touch it with my bare hands. But really quickly, I noticed this. It looks like a piece of cloth sticking out the beach. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. So let's get digging and see what we find in here. Oh. Oh. Do you know what this is? Oh, it's heavy. This is not seaweed. It looks almost like a mop head, but this is a disgusting, matted mess and mixture of wet wipes that have been flushed down the sewage system and for some reason have ended up on this beach. And what's worse is that this, oh, I got it on my coat. What's worse is that this is not the only disgusting thing on this beach. So let's go for the world's worst treasure hunt. Oh. There is a very weird smell on this beach, which I will reveal the source of it in just a minute, but yeah, let's see what kind of stuff we can find lying around. I'll start down here, down near the water. Immediately, sanitary pads. Right among the seaweed here, that's more wet wipes. There's another one, sanitary pads, sanitary pad, sanitary pads, more wet wipe. Another sanitary pad, sanitary pad, sanitary pad, and wet wipes combined. Combo. I have no idea what that is, but at least it's not another sanitary pad. We got a dummy. This is what's down at the water level. Let's go up and take a look up among the rocks over here. Let's see what we can see, because lighter objects will float and the waves will wash them further up the beach. If you look around here, you can see why families would want to come to this beach. Now, up there's a gate blocking access to this beach, and people have broken it down because they're probably thinking, why would you not let us have access to such a beautiful location? But they've got no idea what's down here. Another mass of wet wipes. Wow, look how big that is. It goes all the way right round in there. There's more in there, there's more there. This is beyond disgusting. Here, what's that? Some kind of medical product. That's the plastic stick out of the cotton bud. There's a sanitary pad. Tampon applicator, sanitary pad, wet wipe. I don't think I've ever said sanitary pad so many times in my life. Sanitary pad. Another applicator. Let's walk back down the beach. Oh! Oh! I slipped and smacked my shin off that rock. Oh, just to warn you, just a warning in case you were planning to come here and do your own treasure hunt. Ah, those rocks are slippy. Jackpot! What's this? Is it a pair of cacks? It is a pair of cacks. Lovely. Let's go and have a conversation about why this has happened, and it will horrify you, especially if you live near here. Alright, I need to remember to not eat anything or touch my mouth until I get home and properly wash my hands. Let's go back and investigate that smell. It smells a little bit like if you washed your clothes and then didn't dry them properly and they went stale. And that is because that smell is coming from here. That pipe was put there as a temporary solution in 1977. It's even shown on maps from 1977, plans from 1977 as a temporary solution. It should be a way out there somewhere, but no, it's right here on the edge of the shore. The existence of that pipe is actually illegal. It's in violation of environmental legislation. I really do not want to fall in there because in 2023, that pipe spilled raw sewage over 250 times into Belfast Loch. And if that's not enough to put you off your lunch, this really will. If you come down here, you'll quite often see ducks and seabirds swimming just in there, just near that outlet. And the reason? They're waiting for the undigested sweet corn and other bits of edible stuff that floats out of that pipe. And what's horrifying and disgusting, that's not the only pipe. There are about 270 similar pipes in the Greater Belfast area, the majority of which regularly spill sewage and pollute Belfast Loch. And the reason I know this is because environmental campaigners fought for that information to be made public, and it is. You can go to the NI Water website and there's a page on there, it shows you a map, and on that map it shows you all the different sewage outlets. In fact, you can see it for all of Northern Ireland. There's literally thousands of these, and for many of them you can click on them and it will tell you exactly how many times they spilled sewage in the previous year. So might be worth checking that out if you find a new wild swimming spot and wonder if the water is likely to be clean or not. But a few years ago, NI Water decided to do something about this beach. They brought an excavator in and they started digging. And they dug and they dug. By the time they stopped, they had removed 100 tons of wet wipes, sanitary pads, incontinence pads, condoms, and other kinds of waste from this beach. And they didn't stop because they'd removed all the waste. They had to stop because there's so much waste on this beach that they were beginning to change the shape of the landscape. There is so much non-biodegradable sewage waste here that it's now a structural part of this very beach. I've walked out onto the shells further out from the beach, and the smell of sewage here is actually worse than it was back up at the pipe. And I think that's maybe because we had a storm over the last few days, and this is when you're most likely to see this. That is raw sewage. I know it's raw sewage because it smells like poo, and if you look at it close up in the water, you can see the fibres of the toilet roll. And not too far in that distance, about maybe a kilometre or so, are the vast mussel beds, the mussel farms of Belfast. Now these mussels aren't mostly naturally occurring, they're put there by the shellfish industry, and you'll be pleased to know that they're mostly exported to countries in Europe, and some of them are even frozen and sent to the USA in a sauce. And speaking of sauce, mussels from Belfast Lough have got an endless supply of juicy nuggets and bacteria-filled lumps floating past them as they sit out in the loch. They're very well fed indeed. A little gift to them from the good people of Belfast every time they flush the toilet on a rainy day, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Now, the gross truth is that mussels are filter feeders. They remove filth and nutrients in water, they make the water clean, and they convert that filth into nice succulent flesh that people can eat. And the nutrients that mussels eat can come from sewage. Sewage is full of nutrients, so much in fact that we used to spread it on our fields to grow crops. And that's not a problem in itself. The mussels eat it, they filter it, and they make it safe. Filter feeders like mussels and other shellfish form an essential role in a healthy ecosystem. Now here's the thing that's both interesting and gross. There are a lot more mussels in Belfast Lough than there would be naturally. And it's actually now thought that the mussel farms of Belfast Lough are the last line of defence to the loch becoming completely polluted, because the mussels are gobbling up, as well, I'm not picking that up again, it just landed in some poop. Because the mussels are gobbling up that sewage as it comes out and are actually helping to keep the levels of pollution down. But there's a problem, because the sewage levels are starting to overwhelm the mussel beds, and one by one the mussel beds of Belfast Lough, their classification is getting lower. Testing is showing an increase in the levels of E. coli in shellfish, and also the presence of an algae that can actually kill mussels. So what this means is, as the levels of pollution from sewage increase, it means that more and more mussels are going to need special treatment to make them safe before they can be sold. This then makes mussel farming not profitable, which means that eventually the mussel farms here are going to decline, they're going to disappear. Once the mussels go, the pollution from the sewage is just going to spiral, and Belfast Lough could well end up like Lough Neagh. So it is true to say that people sitting in the cafes and restaurants of Europe, munching their way through Northern Irish mussels, are literally helping keep Belfast Lough healthy. So originally, a long time ago, the sewage system in Belfast was pretty simple. Water that fell as rain was combined with the household waste, went into the same sewer, and then that mixture was flushed into rivers that emptied into Belfast Lough, or it went through pipes that went directly into the loch. And for a while, that actually worked. Nature played its role, it broke down the sewage and things were okay. But then the pollution began to build up as populations increased, smells began to appear, people began to get sick, and so they realised, well, this isn't good enough. And then wastewater treatment works were built to handle this, to treat the waste, to make it safe before then that treated water would be put into the rivers or the loch. And over many decades, there were multiple rounds of investment and improvement in those systems. But the problem was that they only ever upgraded them to the minimum possible standard. So now we have the situation today where the sewage system for Greater Belfast and Northern Ireland as a whole isn't fit for purpose. More than half of the networks in Belfast and the treatment works are at capacity. That is stopping the building of new housing developments and other things from going ahead. But the worst thing that it means is, it means that every time, just about every single time there is heavy rain, that produces a mixed volume of rainwater and sewage in the one system. The wastewater treatment works can't deal with it, and so the surplus is simply dumped directly into the rivers or directly into Belfast Lough. In some areas in Belfast, the system is so outdated that sometimes during storms the system can block. That's often caused by fatbergs created by a combination of those wet wipes you saw earlier will combine with like cooking grease that's been flushed down the sink. They block, and then raw sewage backs up into people's homes. This is Sea Park Beach. It's on the other side of Belfast Lough from that first beach we were at, and this is quite a nice beach. It's quite big, it's sandy, it's right beside a residential area. People walk their dogs here, go for runs, and in the summer you'll sometimes see kids playing in the sand, digging in the sand, making sandcastles, and even sometimes going into the sea itself. But last year there were 70,000 litres of sewage discharged onto this beach. And if you look closely enough, you can once again find those telltale signs of non-biodegradable sewage waste. It's also very much not an area that's designated safe for swimming, and there are signs up warning not to harvest shellfish here because they're not safe because of sewage pollution. And this place is kind of a little bit of a warning of what's potentially coming for every single beach and every single potential swim spot in Belfast Lough. As the pollution increases, more and more places are going to become off limits for swimming and for human activities because it's just not going to be safe because of the pollution. And the lough itself is at risk of dying. The cost to make the necessary upgrades just to the sewage network in Greater Belfast alone is £2 billion, but that is relying on the mussel industry not being destroyed first. If the mussel industry gets killed off, the mussels go and that last barrier to the sewage disappears, it'll cost a lot more than that. It's crazy to think how much the mussels are actually helping. Since I started making this video, there has been an interesting development, because after that report saying for weeks, the BBC have finally picked it up, and in a couple of days they're going to be publishing a report on it, a BBC Spotlight episode in which they claim they're going to reveal who is actually responsible for this. But the thing is, a massive part of the problem is that Northern Ireland is a place with terrible public finances, despite the fact that we've got loads of great businesses here punching above their weight. The fact remains that our politicians still need to go grovelling cap in hand to Westminster for a handout to keep us going that's never quite enough. It feels like everything is underfunded here. The health service, transport, education, it just isn't enough money to go around. So when you're talking about £2 billion to upgrade a sewer network, where on earth is that money going to come from? Is Westminster going to dig into its pockets and give us a bigger handout? Northern Ireland is actually the only place in the UK where we don't pay residential water charges. The average household in England, Scotland and Wales pays £450, about £450 per year. If they brought water charges, residential water charges to Northern Ireland, that would be an extra at least £300 million per year into the public purse, which over 6.5 years is £2 billion. Now, I'm very much aware that one of the reasons we don't have water charges here are because average wages are much lower in Northern Ireland. We're disadvantaged in other ways. So there is a reason why water charges haven't been brought in. But we still kind of have to answer the question in that if money can't be found somewhere else to upgrade the sewage system, are we willing to pay for it? And that's kind of connected to the even bigger question that a lot of people are thinking about at the minute, which is, do we care about the environment enough that we're willing to get comfortable with having a slightly less comfortable bank balance in order to pay for it? But I'm not entirely happy with that as being the answer. Surely there must be a way that we can look after this world that we have a duty to look after, while at the same time not making life harder for other people. There must be an answer. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I do know that the answer is definitely not to do nothing. Actually, one thing we could all maybe just agree to do is to stop flushing things down the toilet that shouldn't be there, because that just puts more strain on the sewage network, which costs even more money. I picked the worst day to do this. All right, I've decided to finish this video here at Lough Neagh, because it took the blue-green algae crisis of the last 2 summers for people to pay attention. It took a horrible physical, visible, smelly, disgusting disaster to happen before we started to really think about how to sort out the problems in Lough Neagh. So the scary question for the people of Belfast is, will it take a horrible, visible disaster happening to Belfast Lough before people take notice? Is it going to take it to turn green some summer, all the seabirds to die, the mussel beds to disappear before that's taken seriously and something's done about it? Or are the people with the ability to actually change things going to do it before that happens? We're going to have to wait and find out. Hope you've enjoyed this little documentary video. If you came here for my Lough Neagh video, apologies that this wasn't as maybe in-depth or comprehensive. I just didn't have enough time to spend on it. That and a lot of the issues around this, especially around the funding and the way various organisations and the water service and all these things are run, it's so confusing. It's really, really difficult to understand, which possibly is one of the reasons these things get overlooked. I find that the more complicated an issue is, the less people are likely to be interested in it, because you have to like learn so much before you can have an informed opinion. But this is something that politicians are currently making decisions about, and if it's something that you care about, I'll link a few resources down in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'm getting out of here because I am soaked.